Welcome to USCHO Bracketology Xtra. I'm Ed Trefsker with Jim Connolly, and you're probably saying, what is this and why did this show up in my podcast app? Well, every year, Jim does a bracketology column as we get closer to the end of the season, looking at what things would look like if the season ended today and what teams have to do to get in. And Jim said, hey, let's make it a podcast. So we did. And so this is episode number 1. So thanks for tuning into this. By the way, it is sponsored by the NCAA Division I Men's Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th, 2026 in Las Vegas. Tickets are at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. And this is for Thursday, January 15th, 2026. And you can also watch it on YouTube at youtube.com/USCHO. So I think I covered everything that I was supposed to there, Jim. I always look forward to this when you kind of look at things and look where teams might end up. And I guess we should start out with the bracket. And by the way, both in the show notes and in the description in YouTube, you'll see a link to Jim's article about this so you can follow along with all the detail. We won't get into all the machinations of where everybody is because that just gets too tedious in a podcast. But why don't we look at the brackets? And first of all, let's note that all 4 top seeds are from the West region. And we'll talk about that in a minute because that means some travel. But Jim, your brackets are pretty interesting. Do you want to go through them?
Yeah, I'll start with the number 1 seed part because you mentioned all 4 are Western teams. We just don't have a high Eastern team right now. We don't have a Quinnipiac, or at one point we had Dartmouth as the number 1. They were in that top 4 and they were number 1 overall seed. All 4 are West. So you're going to have the Worcester and Albany regions are going to have Western teams as their number 1 seed. It's just a default. The way I seeded it was to put Michigan and Albany and put Minnesota Duluth in Worcester. And that makes a little bit of sense, but you're saying Michigan and Albany, they're the number 1 overall seed. Why are you sending them to Albany? You want to put them as close as you can. Mm-hmm. Sioux Falls, South Dakota is probably as close. It might be, I didn't actually do the mileage out, but I didn't even bother with it because North Dakota is also a number 1 seed than the number 2 overall. I was really focused on getting North Dakota to Sioux Falls. So once I do that, I'm really thinking about putting the number 1 overall seed anywhere. Michigan at some point is hopping on a plane. They're not driving to this game no matter what. So you're hopping on a plane ride to Loveland, a plane ride to Worcester, and a plane ride to Albany is all the same. So I went with putting Michigan there. With the way the bracket worked out, Michigan State is also there as the number 2 seed in Albany. I love that potential regional. Some of the others, Minnesota Duluth out in Worcester, that has a couple of Eastern teams in it, in Providence and Quinnipiac, as well as Western Michigan. And then that Western bracket, we're going to really talk about Sioux Falls a lot today, but North Dakota and Augustana in Sioux Falls. If that is something that the committee can do, and right now it's possible, you're really talking about a sold out Sioux Falls region. That's fantastic. And then Loveland, you have the host Denver playing there, Wisconsin, the number 1 seed in that region. But you have Denver is going to drive traffic in Colorado. So I think that the attendance right now, maybe Worcester and Albany, not the sharpest, not the greatest, but I think that attendance is pretty good right now.
It seems like it. I mean, you can make a case for Cornell drawing some fans, maybe Bentley and yep. Michigan and Michigan State. It's really not that bad. I mean, it's not a great drive. You could do it in about 9 hours, but it's an easy flight from, say, Detroit to Albany. And I'm sure there are a fair number of flights there. Even getting to Worcester, if you fly into Logan in Boston, you're less than an hour away.
Not the worst.
So that's not too bad. So I don't see any attendance issues in those. And, I think we're going to talk a little bit about attendance in a moment. Some people might be saying, is it fair to make people fly? But as you pointed out, everybody's going to have to fly except Denver. They'll have a drive to Loveland, I think. And North Dakota can drive
Yes.
to Sioux Falls. But, you go down through that list, Cornell and Bentley is a bus drive. Providence and Quinnipiac is a bus ride too. Everybody, well, no, Augustana and North Dakota, it's almost in their backyard. So Princeton and Penn State have a flight. And in Loveland, well, it's going to be probably everybody except Denver, but that's about how it always works out, isn't it?
Feels that way. There was a point in time that I felt like you really were focused on getting the host team to play at their home arena. But that means the host has to make it. Right now in Sioux Falls, the host is Omaha. Not that far away, but you have Augustana really close, North Dakota not too far away as well. So, you don't have to worry about a host team. So these teams don't get forced there. You have to put the host. Like in Loveland, you have to have Denver. They're the host. The host in Sioux Falls is Omaha. So right now, you don't have to put them there. You're doing it just to really drive attendance. You don't have that situation right now out in the East. Union is the host in Albany. Holy Cross is the host in Worcester. I don't know that either one of them would drive attendance the way that Augustana and North Dakota will as non-hosts out in Sioux Falls. So I do think that if you get other hosts in, a Holy Cross or a Union, obviously that will help attendance. But attendance right now has to be driven not by the host schools because you just don't have enough of them qualified.
Well, and then you put North Dakota and Augustana in there, and we know North Dakota's fans travel, and so they're going to sell a lot of tickets. That's going to be an arena to sell out. North Dakota in Albany was a bust a few years ago, but you're also talking really the biggest capacity of any of the arenas that are hosting this year. It's a big, beautiful space. I don't remember the numbers. I probably should have looked it up, but I think it's something like 11,000 that building holds. Is that correct?
For Sioux Falls?
Yeah.
Yeah, just under 11,000. So there's plenty of seats. And I started thinking about when I'm putting North Dakota and Augustana in Sioux Falls, the demand for tickets will be high. And it started to remind me of Maryland Heights a few years ago when they played that regional before the Frozen Four in St. Louis. They played it the year before just to kind of promote the area. They played at Centene Ice Arena outside of St. Louis. That was a really small building. And I believe you had Michigan and Michigan State, if I remember right, were there. The demand for tickets was ridiculous. This will be a little bit different. This building is probably 3 times the size of Maryland Heights. So I don't worry too much about the overall capacity. I think you'll have enough tickets to satisfy the fan bases. You really want to create this demand for tickets at a regional.
Yeah, and that'll probably calm down some of the folks who've been complaining about not having stuff on campus and show that attendance is good. And I really think the last couple, 3 years, the committee's done an excellent job with attendance. So we did a quick tour through the number ones, but what about the other regions? I mean, first of all, let's start with Albany. You pointed it out up top. Michigan and Michigan State are the 1 and 2 seeds. Should they advance, and they would be the odds-on favorites to do that, although that Michigan State-Cornell rematch is a fun one if that were to happen. But say you get Michigan and Michigan State, that could also very well be a rematch of the Big Ten championship, not to count out anybody else, but what a matchup you could have in that region.
Yeah, it might not be the best attended regional championship game if Michigan were to play Michigan State, but what an awesome pairing that would be. It might, like you said, it could be a repeat of a Big Ten, either semifinal or final. It might be, obviously the rivalry and bringing that big rivalry out into an NCAA regional is even better. It sets up really well. But, Cornell has loved to play spoiler of late. Under Mike Schaefer, they did it almost regularly the last few years in that opening round. I do think that they will be a big challenge. And listen, Bentley, we saw Bentley give Boston College everything it could handle. If Bentley wins Atlantic hockey again and gets in, woof, they are a tough team to play. And Michigan on a not so home ice, they're pretty far away from home. Michigan would play Bentley and Albany. That's a tough first round matchup. Boston College found that out last year.
Bentley very well may be a better team this year than they were last year. They're kind of running away with Atlantic hockey right now. Well, how about Worcester, the other Eastern region setup, and a team that we've talked about it on our podcast episodes that I overlooked, I think we all did, is how good Minnesota Duluth is. And in the second round, they would either face Western Michigan or Quinnipiac, but before the second round, they also got to watch out for Providence, which is a very good team this year.
Scary, right? That this is a Providence team that we've had the controversy with Providence before, that they don't host when they're in Providence and they've been put there. Well, Worcester's only one quick ride up a single road. Route 126 goes from Providence right to Worcester. You'll be up there in about 45 minutes to an hour. That's a tough one for Minnesota Duluth to have a Providence team not too far from home. If their fan base travels, that will be a tough matchup. And then Western Michigan, Quinnipiac, you're talking about maybe the possibility of another championship game rematch. If you got both Minnesota Duluth and Western Michigan, how do we know that's not going to be the NCHC championship game just a few days earlier? So I do love that region as well.
When we go to the Sioux Falls region, right now you would have North Dakota and Princeton and Penn State and Augustana. Certainly huge atmospheres in the building for both of those games, but that Penn State Augustana game, both teams like to really move. And Augustana, the upstart, Penn State, at least as good as last year, if not better. We'll see how they do down the stretch, because last year, the second half of the season was amazing for the Nittany Lions, but what a matchup that would be. And then North Dakota, you got to watch out. You're always ripe for an upset. You're going to have maybe 10,000 fans in that building, but you also have a Princeton team that seemingly came out of nowhere this year too.
Yeah, that's a scary one for North Dakota. I'm sure they'll feel pretty good playing that in Sioux Falls, but we don't have to go that far back. I think it was 2017 where they lost against Boston University in double or triple overtime in the opening round. I don't know that this has the same fear factor that Boston University had back then. Princeton hasn't been in an NCAA tournament in a very, very long time. So we'll see on that one. I do love Penn State Augustana, though. Talk about two teams that, I mean, that feels like a game that could be 7-5 and it could also be 3-2. So if we get that one, that would be a lot of fun as well.
And then Loveland, of course, Denver with the local crowd we expect. They're going to take on another upstart team from this year, Denver, should this bracket happen. And of course, it may look totally different by the end of the season, but we're pretending that the season ended today to everyone's surprise. So Dartmouth and Denver would be interesting. Wisconsin and St. Thomas, I don't know how the draw would be, but that would be two really good teams, and I'm sure a terrific matchup.
Yeah, interesting if we get St. Thomas into the field and, bring Rico Blasi back into an NCAA tournament. We remember what he did with some of his Miami teams. I would love to see them in. Wisconsin's a great first round matchup. And then you get the home team, Denver, hosting a Dartmouth team. That would be really enjoyable as well. The one thing I'm looking as I look at all four of these brackets, this is a true national tournament. You don't have teams playing, at home. You don't have teams, typically, matching up that you see every day. I mean, when was the last time that Princeton played North Dakota, if ever? When would Dartmouth play Denver? Probably never. So I love that this real national tournament feel.
Some quick hits, big games that impact the NPI this week and things to watch for. BC versus Providence. It's home and home. And speaking of Providence, Nate Lehman, in his media availability, talked about the NPI and how volatile it is, especially because everyone that's a 51 or higher score in the NPI causes a bonus. So you can get some bonuses in unexpected places and especially some swings along that bonus line. These are teams that both really need to do well right now to cement an at-large and to position themselves for the Hockey East playoffs. So a huge pair of games there.
Yeah, real big games. Providence, they have put themselves in good position after they swept Maine last weekend. Another sweep this weekend against Boston College. You're talking about maybe moving into the top 10 of the NPI, but BC right below the bubble right now. They're trying to play themselves in, and this is one of their best opportunities. You're playing a Providence team that will boost your NPI with a couple of wins. So either team sweeps this one, it's really good. You almost have to predict a split though because of the way that Hockey East has gone this season.
Michigan State at Wisconsin, which starts tonight, Thursday, the 15th of January. This is some shuffling around at the top of the NPI board. Road results are a big deal here if Michigan State can pull something out because they get that multiplier. But the implications of this, both in the Big Ten, but especially for the NPI, are enormous.
Yeah, what you're talking about, the thought that Michigan State could earn a lot of bonus points going on the road, beating a Wisconsin team that right now sitting top 3 in the NPI. So this has huge implications. This is not really a bubble game. This is much more about who's near the top and what teams can cement their position near the top.
Princeton and Cornell on Friday. ECAC head-to-head, a single game because of the travel partner setup. That can impact both the NPI and standings in the ECAC, and whom maybe even gets a first-round bye or not in that league.
Yeah, I just look at the NPI part. 2 teams that are really right around the bubble. You're trying to find a way to hold on. The fact that this is only a single game probably takes a little bit of the impact. If this is a 2-game series and you're talking the potential for a sweep, then you're talking about more motion, but still 1 game will move the needle in the NPI.
Minnesota Duluth travels to St. Cloud State. Duluth doesn't want to give away any position in the NPI or points in the NCHC. And St. Cloud maybe could change things on the season with a couple of wins. Huge series.
Yeah, that looks like the team in the NCHC that's on the outside, most poised to maybe get in if they could. I think they're 19 right now. If they can play themselves up into that top 15, they have the most opportunity because you have so many strong teams in the NCHC, all NCHC games going forward. Every game they're going to play has the potential to raise their NPI significantly. So that's one of those things. You have to look at St. Cloud State. This is the start of trying to play themselves into the tournament.
And Denver at North Dakota, that whole road thing applies here too. If Denver can pull off one or even they're going to be battling for the NCHC playoff positions, but this has a huge implication even on who might be a number 1 seed or who could fall a little bit in that.
Yeah, and that's what this is really about. It's about who's looking for that number 1 seed. Both of these teams, come year end, could both easily be number 1 seeds. But this could be one of those weekends you look back and say, if we didn't get swept by X that weekend, we'd be a number 1 seed. Instead, we dropped to a 3. That's maybe the volatility that you look at.
Well, we'll keep you updated on the NPI all through until the championships in all the conferences and Selection Sunday, letting you know what we think is going on. Jim breaks it all down, as we mentioned, in his weekly column, which you can find in the show notes. This episode has been sponsored by the NCAA Division I Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Las Vegas. For Jim Conley, I'm Ed Trefsker, and this has been USCHO Bracketology Extra.